Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining today's tech showcase on behavioral, non-conscious, implicit, and emotion. Before I hand it on over to Lenny, I just want to cover a few things. First, we've got that chat box. Drop your LinkedIn or let us know where you're tuning in from. We love to connect. And next, we've got that Q&A box. If you have any questions, put them there and we'll get to them at the end. And now, Lenny, I will hand it on over to you.
Thanks, Bridget. Hey, everybody. Welcome to this Insights Tech Showcase on a topic that is near and dear to my heart, on behavioral, non-conscious, implicit, and emotion. I'm just a big fan of these methodologies, but a lot of folks don't know how they're used and when we should use them. So we're going to go through a quick crash course to get everybody grounded. So probably the best way to think about this, what the terminology I use is applied behavioral science. Everything fits under that bucket. And if we look at that, basically, traditionally research has been focused on what people say. And now we're able, under behavioral science, to predict what they would do based on emotions or predict what they would do based on behaviors. So that's this big category of, behavioral data, and let's call it emotional non-conscious data as well. So as we're talking about this, it's behavioral science, which incorporates lots of different types of data points that are involved with not what people say, but what they do and how they feel. So there's the big overview. Now, there's lots of ways to measure people feel and do. There's direct measures capturing what's happening, feelings and actions. For feeling, there's things like EEG, fMRI, galvanic skin response, or biometrics, things that are measuring how the body is reacting that are cued in to emotions. A lot of that comes from neuroscience, from medicine. Do behavioral approaches are eye tracking, AI-based visual intensity, which basically predicts where the eye is drawn based upon a large database that was focused originally on eye tracking. And then there's digital observation and tracking, things like digital exhaust, for example. There's measures that capture a proxy for what's happening. So from the feel standpoint, we've got facial coding, implicit or timed response, metaphor elicitation, voice analysis, text analysis that gets into sentiment, and then a battery of approaches to get to values and motivations. Then a do behavioral approach, there's behavioral economics framing. That's the whole system 1, system 2 thinking, all the Kahneman stuff, and also prediction markets. So there's lots of tools that do lots of different components here, and the goal is to find the right tool based upon the research objectives to meet your needs. And we're going to get a little more into that now. So here's kind of the applications and benefits. So on the emotional approaches, from a development approach, metaphor elicitation, it helps to clarify a brand's current emotional space, provide guidance, shift to new spaces. Intense testing approaches, EEG and fMRI, those are considered gold standard, but they're also very expensive and comparatively speaking, and they do involve, a human going and, being hooked up and going through that process. So it's not necessarily the fastest of approaches. They are commonly used when investment in production and distribution is high. So moderate testing approaches, facial coding, implicit response, those are easily done digitally. They rely on the Plutchik model of emotions. The facial coding does require a device with a camera, which is basically not an issue anymore because most everybody has a device with a camera on it. Implicit doesn't necessarily require any special technology other than within the questionnaire itself, the ability to do rapid timed response. Eye tracking, that measures gaze and intensity. There are approaches now that do utilize existing cameras. So for instance, on a cell phone, that's getting better and better. But you do have to train the respondent to ensure that their eye is there and that the camera is picking it up. So you get that approach. But there's also lots of wearable devices that do eye tracking as well. Companies like Tobii, for instance, they really kind of pioneered that to a great extent. But increasingly, as we're seeing more consumer-centric devices from Apple, from Meta, a lot of that's embedded in as well. We'll see what consumer adoption looks like there. AI-based visual intensity, lots of solutions that exist out there. That was pioneered by 3M with their VAS model, and that doesn't require anything as far as you just load up the stimuli and it duplicates where the eye is going to be drawn. Digital observation and tracking, lots of suppliers out there that offer behavioral data. Some of those you may see here, and that's pretty ubiquitous to be able to access that data. It's more of a privacy compliant issue. You have to make sure that the panelists are engaged and are given permission for that data. Behavioral economics framing, that is more of a contextual framework to think about getting into things like conversion and nudging to produce desired outcomes. So I don't want to belabor a point here. You're going to get a copy of this deck. This is a description of each methodology in a deeper way. So each of them do have technical specifications, the difference between EEG and facial coding, for instance. So just know this is here for you to have as a takeaway, to have a slightly deeper view on what each of these things do between emotional approaches and behavioral approaches and explanations of the methodologies. Now, let's tie this to research issues. So here's a kind of a simplified framework that I use, basically 4 big buckets: strategy, innovation, communication, and experience. Under strategy, we have things like segmentation, positioning, journey; innovation, ideation, development, optimization; communication, research; positioning, development, testing; and experience, usability, satisfaction, and engagement. Lots of granularity comes underneath each of these, but the goal here is to give you a sense of where we're going to build off of here is how do these things fit together in thinking about, all right, I have this emotional or behavioral tool, and the business issue I'm trying to address is, let's say, communication. What's the best set of solutions that I should bring in to be able to accomplish that goal, to benefit from the additional data that can be acquired through these approaches. All right, you're not going to be able to read this on the screen, but again, it's in the deck. And this is a model that we've put together where we basically take the same approach, and we use a filter that we call PRIX: price, research, innovation, quality, and speed, and kind of score each of these approaches based upon that criteria. So for instance, as you look at this as a takeaway, if your need is for something fast and inexpensive, then fMRI is probably not the right solution for any of the business issues that you're trying to address. So that's the prioritization here. But the other solutions can meet the need for price, its reach, meaning large scalable samples, innovation, quality, and speed. If there's nothing there, then in our judgment, it's not applicable for the issue at all. So for instance, marketing mix, you see that it's blank. I personally do not see an applicability for any of the behavioral or non-conscious measurement tools in marketing mix modeling. But this should be a useful takeaway. As hard as it is to read here, it's a cheat sheet for you to be able to have and take with you and say, okay, I want to mix and match the business issue to the solution based upon these motivating factors for the project itself on price, reach, innovation, quality, or speed. Now, here's a better example. So we're looking at strategy, and from a segmentation standpoint, it adds value to the segmentation to understand the emotional connection to the category or brand or product. That's the feel component. The do is behavior-based segments. So here's how we want to measure to understand from a segmentation standpoint how a specific population reacts emotionally, and then do behaviorally what they do as a result of that. Remember, we're putting aside say. So we're trying to get to how people actually behave and understanding why they behave that way related to the topic. Positioning, same thing, emotional connection. And the do would be needs-based positioning. That would be two ways you put these different pieces together that would add to greater impact of the research results for a positioning study. Or for journey, what are the emotional needs along the journey? This particularly, I've seen this very used really well within healthcare, particularly in pharma, understanding the patient journey. Particularly, we did some work with a provider of cancer drugs, and looking at the patient need and experience from that standpoint. And that's very different than what people say. It gives you that sense of walking a mile in somebody's shoe. So here's just examples of how you could put those things together. Another in communication, same thing. For positioning is the positioning statement, whatever the marketing communications, are they aligned to strategy that you want to elicit response? And do they define the need, meaning, I want to take this action going from there. Same thing with development, to make sure that there's a connection to the product or the brand, and people are actually taking action as a result of that. In testing, obviously advertising, the ad that elicits the emotional response that you'd like, happiness, joy, contentment, nostalgia, and people take action as a result of that. They buy the product due to the exposure. Same thing, innovation. Again, I'm just trying to give you a sense of how these things work within ideation, help define the aspiration. What is the product or concept, and how do we want to be perceived? What emotional reactions do we want to elicit in a population? And then do what people do as a result of that helps to define the need. Are we meeting that? In the development process, achieving that aspiration and achieving the need, in optimization, hitting the aspiration. Make sure that we've put all the product components together to meet the need. It elicits the appropriate emotional response, and people are taking the action that we want them to take as a result. Experience, usability, of course, understand joys and frustrations of the product, and then understanding what do we do about it to help alleviate those things. Satisfaction, again, joys, frustrations. The do is retention. That's the measurement of that. Engagement, the connection to the product or service, and it'll make sure that we maintain that connection. So again, all of these are just kind of broad examples to give you a sense of how this whole battery of tools can be used to help enhance the research process related to the business issues. Now, so grit data, earlier in the year, we are absolutely seeing an uptick in adoption of these tools. It has been steadily growing for years. The yellow highlights that you see here are all of this battery of methodologies that we ask about usage, and they continue to grow to be part of the toolkit that everybody utilizes within the research space. Well, not everybody. I think everybody should be utilizing them. But certainly a growing proportion of researchers are understanding that we can do more than just what people say, more than just the survey, more than just the focus group. And here's some key takeaways. As I just said, adoption rate is pretty high. 46 of buyers of Insights services are using or testing non-conscious measurement techniques. Eye tracking is the most prevalent because it's probably one of the easiest things to do, eye tracking and facial coding. They're just ubiquitous. Technology enables scale. When we look at specific ones, we see eye tracking at 40%, applied neuroscience, which is this kind of broader bucket of categories that would also include implicit, for instance, at 25, facial coding at 29, biometric response, when we're wired up with something on our heads or our bodies, excuse me, at 16. Interestingly, only 21% of suppliers offer these capabilities. So if you are wanting to grow your spend, then I suggest that you consider incorporating these solutions. And again, some of them are almost no-brainers at this point. Why would you not include facial coding or eye tracking, for instance, as a part of a survey capability offered to your clients? It's just really easy. There's lots of companies that have modules for implicit testing. And what it reminds me of is in the early days of social media analytics, I would hear consistently from suppliers, well, my clients aren't asking me for it. Like, well, why would they? You're not offering it. So so don't fall into the trap of thinking, well, my clients don't ask me for it, therefore they don't want it. No, they do want it. There are other companies that specialize in these things that are large and are taking increasing market share. So from a competitive standpoint, these are tools that you should have in your toolbox, and there's no reason why you shouldn't be offering them to your clients, because they do add value overall, and they add impact, and it's getting easier and easier to incorporate them. These are not big, complex solutions. I mean, EEG and fMRI and that type of stuff, that's one thing. Yes, that requires a little more work. But many of the solutions we're talking about are very, very easy to implement within the standard framework of qualitative and quantitative, particularly from a digital standpoint. And that just gets in, to the market potential. As technologies evolve, AI is, for instance, is making a lot of these things far easier to incorporate, particularly from an analytical standpoint. Some people are afraid of, well, I don't know how to use the data. Well, a lot of that is just being solved. So I anticipate that we're going to see them just continue to grow. It is a vital part of the Internet of Things, thinking about smart devices that are measuring emotion as well. So we should be incorporating that into the research process. Now, I'm obviously someone who argues that they should be more widely adopted. There's work to be done, and the market has to catch up and respond to the demand. So recognize that, just because your current supplier, let's say you're a buyer of research and your current supplier is not offering this, you certainly can go to somebody that is. But what will help the cause is if you ask your supplier, hey, I'd like to do facial coding here as well. And help them to rise to the occasion to meet your needs. So that's it for this one. Hopefully that's helpful. I know I sped through a lot. You'll get a copy of the deck. There's more details in there. Always happy to follow up and give any additional suggestions or context or nuance if needed. But now I'm going to hush, let you get to the fun part of the event, which is the actual suppliers that are here to show off what they do. So I'll see you at the next Insights Tech Showcase. Bye for now.